Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. Now we have an utterly packed show this week, so I'm not going to waste any time on the introduction, let's just get straight into it. The first project on this week's show is on the Electromaker website, and it is such a detailed and in-depth project that even to cover it in brief is a little too long for this show. I'm going to try. But as it says here, this is an O3 enabled BLE weather station predicting air quality with TensorFlow. That's what the W and the T and the F stand for. From that title alone, you can tell that it's going to use ozone and it's going to try and predict the air quality using TensorFlow. But the detail this goes into is incredible. So for a start, what you're seeing in the gifts that keep switching around is an anemometer. Now, that is the thing that you can see spinning on top of buildings and weather stations. It measures wind speed. There also is a temperature and humidity sensor in there. There is also an ozone sensor, of course, as I have just mentioned. So that by itself is pretty cool. But what he does with the data is just incredible. Now, as I said, I'm not going to be able to go through this in full because, I mean, this is just a huge project and every single aspect of it is explained perfectly. Reading through this, it is a nice project to read. There's been some fantastic projects turn up on the Electromaker website recently, and I wonder whether that's because we're starting to give prizes to the best projects each month. Those winners have not been chosen, by the way, and they're not chosen by me, just in case anyone's wondering and watching the show. I have nothing to do with who wins those, which is only fair considering I wax lyrical about how much I love all projects on this show every week. But yes, so back to this particular project. This GIF is as good a place to start as any. Now, the board you're seeing in there is an Arduino Nano BLE33, which of course is capable of Bluetooth Low Energy, which we'll come on to in a moment. When the button is pressed, it uses the available sensor data and performs inference on it. There is a trained model on that Arduino Nano, again, we'll come back to that in a moment, and it uses that to predict whether the air quality is good, medium, or bad. Now, I said I'd come back to the Bluetooth Low Energy part of it, and that's what we're getting onto now. So, using the Bluetooth Low Energy capabilities of the Arduino Nano, they are sending the data from all of these sensors as a packet over to a waiting Raspberry Pi 4. And the way that is all done is explained in the code. This is a fantastic tutorial as well. It doesn't just explain what's going on, it steps through the code line by line and explains everything that is happening there. By virtue of sending this information over to the Pi, you can see it in the terminal, but he's also been able to build a large CSV file of all of this data. And it is that data which was then sent to TensorFlow, well, not sent to TensorFlow, there was a model created using TensorFlow. Again, the project goes into the exact detail as to how he did that. And then that TensorFlow model was compiled down to a C array, which is the way that you can get it to run on an Arduino Nano. Now, that thing I've just said, I stumbled over my words slightly because that is slightly above my level of knowledge. I am absolutely aware that you need to convert to a very certain format in order to run something as difficult as inference on something as small as an Arduino Nano BLE33. But luckily, there are people like this who actually do it and explain it to us. There is much more to this particular project. It is breathtaking. I love it so much. Reading this has been so much fun. I'm looking forward to reading it once again. I wish I had more time to go into it, but as you can see, this is huge. Wonderfully explained, lots of photos, videos showing it all off. Yeah, I will leave a link to this one in the description. This is one of the coolest projects I've seen in a while. Our next project is called Loopie, which is a super professional looking but completely DIY build of a little DIY RGB sort of mood lamp. I say sort of because it doesn't do anything to actually detect your mood. It's just people kind of call these things mood lamps, don't they? These color changing lamps. And the thing about this project that I find notable is that it doesn't use your average microcontroller. It uses a DigiSpark AT-Tiny85 microcontroller. Now, there is a well put together video showing this thing off, and I suggest you go and watch it. But if we go down to here, you can see there's a couple of nice mock-ups of it. Here is essentially everything that this build requires. I mean, obviously there's the build side of it. That requires wood, it requires a diffusion film, but the technical side of it is this. So you have some WS2812B RGB strips. Other places call them NeoPixels. That's the Adafruit name for them, but they're all fundamentally the same chip and LED setup, and this is the super interesting little thing, the DigiSpark AT-Tiny85. Now, as far as I know, these things are no longer available, unfortunately, which is a pity because I don't have one. I would love to fiddle around with these. I haven't spent enough time with the AT-Tiny series in general. They're fantastic little cheap tiny chips that can do a lot if you don't require a lot of grunt power. And as you can see, this one is a lovely setup. It's a USB key with a few little GPIO pins here, and then you can see there's power and ground and stuff over here, so that when it comes to the actual build, you can just plug your power cables into it. So everything you need to make your own one of these is here, including detailed build in terms of the physical side of the build. Also all of the Arduino code, because most 80 Tiny chips are programmable using the Arduino IDE. And yeah, everything you need is here. So if you are interested in building your own Loopie mood lamp, this is one of the more aesthetically pretty builds, and I do love it when something like this does come together. Because when this thing is finished, as you've seen from the very start and as you're seeing here, it does look really quite pretty. There's a little bit of that unrefined, purely DIY nature to it, but it does look very aesthetically pretty, and to me that's actually better than a very, very polished, obviously factory-made product. But of course, that's just how I feel about these kind of things. Anyway, I will leave a link to this in the description of the video so you can make your own if you would like. Now we're moving over to Carl Bugeja, whose name I am probably mispronouncing, I apologize. But he is the creator of the Flexar flexible actuator. Now, if you're not familiar with his channel, he's done a lot of work with flexible PCBs in general over some time. In fact, his channel is just one of those treasure troves. I say this about a lot of channels I know. But he has a wonderful way of thinking about things and is always working on something new. And as you're seeing, the Flexar is a tiny little flexible actuator. When it's powered, it generates enough of a current to be a speaker, to move magnets. You're seeing all of the potential ways it could be used just here. And if you want to get some idea, I mean, you're seeing from the video how small it is, but I actually have one here. As soon as they came out, I bought a packet of 10 of them. A, I wanted to support Carl, and B, I thought it would be a really fun thing to play with, because when these things flap, they do create audio. And as you can see, if I hold that up next to my finger, these things are really, really tiny, and they don't require that much current to run. You can run one of these off an Arduino. So while that introduction wasn't necessary, I just wanted to kind of go through that. We have talked about Carl on the show before, but in case you weren't sure who he was, just to give context to what he's just put out now, because it's a bit of a different video for him. This is how to buy electronics in 2022. I'm sure if you watch this show, whether you are a hobby maker or whether you actually work in the industry, you've been hit by the chip shortage and the fact that just everything is out of stock everywhere with seemingly no end in sight. And this is a video from someone who frequently has a high throughput of components, let's say. It's probably a good way of putting it. There's not really much more for me to say about this, other than saying that if you are someone who is affected by the chip shortage and maybe are a sole worker, you work on your own project, or maybe you're part of a company but you're the only one that's really dealing with the brunt of this stuff, he has some great tips for how you can plan projects ahead of time and how to get the components you need to make your things. So I'll leave that at that. I will leave a link to the description to Carl's channel. This is a great video, and also if you haven't seen the other stuff on his channel, I highly recommend having a look at his backlog of videos. There's some really interesting stuff he's made. So we talked about Phil's lab relatively recently on the show because he's just released a course which goes from nothing to designing a PCB to creating a digital signal processing board. But regular viewers of the show will understand why I've come back to his channel so soon, because there's another follow-on series on this channel, which is not a direct follow-on to that course. It's just a lot of his series intertwine very well. This is digital audio processing using the STM32. Now, if you are a regular viewer of the show, you know why I'm featuring this. If you are not, hardware and audio, where the two meet, is the thing that I'm the most interested in when it comes to microcontrollers. I do not have the time to really delve deep into it, but if I was going to set up one large-scale hobby project for myself, it would be creating digital audio hardware. And Phil, it specializes in this. His channel leans heavily on how to create your own PCBs, how to program them, and a lot of it is to do with digital signal processing. In many ways, this is a follow-on to a different series that Phil did, which is mostly to do with how to work with the STM32 in general. If you've heard things like DMA to do with the STM32, and it's something that you aren't familiar with, his earlier videos will demystify it. It stands for Direct Memory Access. It's something that I still am not very experienced with. If I'm being absolutely honest, whenever I've used DMA with the STM32, it's mostly using other people's code as examples and tweaking it so it worked, or at least seemed to work in my favor. But Phil has a way of going through things in immense detail, and if there's something in one of his videos that is above your knowledge level at that time, chances are there is a complementary series on his channel that will help you with it, and he's very good at saying, if this is stuff that you don't understand, perhaps watch this series first. That's what makes this channel so good. Every video is a good diving in point because it points to another spot. Anyway, I will leave it at that for now. I'll leave a link to this first video in the description. It's part of a series, and of course you can just find the full series by heading to Phil's Lab's channel or looking for the relevant playlist there. So yeah, Phil's Lab, digital audio processing, excitement. Now, I am absolutely aware that I am rattling through these projects at a fair rate this week because we have such a lot to fit into the show, but I couldn't let this show go by without what is probably the biggest buzz in a retro handheld making in a while, and that is this. This is the Penkesu computer, or the Penkesu computer, which is a homebrew retro-style handheld PC, and look at it, it does look wonderful, doesn't it? So, this is a retro-style handheld device powered by a Raspberry Pi 2W and with a 7.2-inch widescreen display with a 400 by 1280 resolution and a 48 keys ortholinear mechanical keyboard on it, which is a really lovely touch. And as you can see, it does look like a very professional device. It really is a wonderful build. The little sheen on the case makes me wonder if he's used a special kind of paint on it in order to make it look like that. I'm not absolutely certain. Another thing that's so wonderful about this project is its simplicity. What you're seeing here is the entire bill of materials, and each part of these is either easily sourced or 3D printable. And so yeah, here's the aforementioned 7.9-inch cap touch display, and then Adafruit DIY cable parts, a Game Boy Advance SP replacement hinges. That's a really interesting way of doing it. So you're using Game Boy Advanced hinges and then using 3D printed parts. I missed that the first time I saw that. That's lovely. And then, of course, the electronics is your Raspberry Pi Zero and a LiPo battery and some power changing boosting circuitry so that you can charge the battery and, of course, power the Raspberry Pi Zero too. And as you can see, this is a GitHub page, so this has everything that you need in order to get going, as well as the firmware. I think there are so many retro handhelds and Raspberry Pi decks, and there's lots of those projects out there, and they're all wonderful in their own way, but this is the first one in a while that I've seen that I have that almost consumerist want. Like, if I could buy one of these, I have literally no need for it, but I really love the look of it. It does make me wonder whether this might be a nice little side project, something to maybe tap away on in the wee hours of the night when I could potentially do a little bit of work, but having a full laptop out seems a little bit overkill. Who knows? But yeah, what a wonderful project. I will leave a link to this GitHub page in the description, and if you do end up building one yourself or plan to, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to see how you get on. Before we go on, a little quick housekeeping. If you are enjoying the Electromaker Show, it would mean a lot to me if you could click subscribe under this video to subscribe to our channel, and click like on the video to say that you like it. Also, there is a little notification bell by the subscription button. If you set that to all, you'll get notifications just within YouTube when new shows go live. Meaning when you get to YouTube, there'll be a little bell in the corner with a number next to it, and we'll be under that list, so you don't have to come to the channel every time. This might seem like arbitrary things, and I know every YouTuber asks you to do it, but it does make a marked difference to us, and it makes it far more likely that other like-minded people will find this show. Alternatively, if you would like to support us in a more financial way, we do not have a Patreon, we do not take donations, we do not put adverts on our videos, but we do have an online store. You can find it at electromaker.io and click on the shop tab, and we stock things from pretty much every major hobby and industry embedded seller that you could want. So if you do want to support us, that's by far the best way that you could do it. None of these things are mandatory, but they do help us out. Thank you so much. Let's get on with the rest of the show. It is time once again for the mystery box competition. That is right, we have a box of mystery, and it's just down here. I forgot to pick it up before I started the section. Yes, indeed, you can tell it is a box of mystery, for it has mystery written on it, and it is the simplest competition we could come up with, really. I have this box of stuff that was provided by the lovely people at Mauser, and I reach my hand in and I pull out a box, and it is... Oh, I recognize this box. We've given away one of these before. One sec. Okay, this is a Thunderboard Sense 2. These are really, really lovely little development boards from Silicon Labs. And I'm wondering if I'm going to be able to show it to you. No, this is a sealed static box. And my rule is if it is a sealed thing, I don't get it out and fiddle with it before I give it away. So let me show you the page on the Silicon Labs website about it. So, I will keep this brief, which is sort of what this entire show has been like, hasn't it? This is a wonderful little development kit. I haven't had the chance to actually fiddle with one yet. I'd love to, but I've only given them away on the show. Maybe there's yet another one in the box I could sneakily have a go at playing with. But yeah, these are fantastic. They have a little radio module on the EFR32, which is a Bluetooth module. And it also has a bunch of sensors on it as well. So very quickly, let's just look through this. Wireless Gecko EFR32, wireless system on chip with a multi-protocol radio, ARM Cortex M4 core, and a few other nice things. Kit features 2.4 gigahertz radio configuration with onboard antenna, J-Link debugging, and a 8 megabit, or is that, yeah, megabits, SPI ultra low power NOR flash for local storage. Microbit, megabit, bit. Now, here's the other side of it, which is the fun stuff. It's got a humidity and temperature sensor, a UV and ambient light sensor, pressure sensor, air quality and gas sensor, a 6-axis inertial sensor, a digital MEMS microphone, an LED and a Hall effect sensor, all packed into this tiny little board, which is inside this case here. So once again, we have a prize to give away. We just need someone to give it to. And the way mystery box prizes are chosen is completely at random. It's just a comment from the previous week's video, and the winner this week is Saint Aardvark, who commented saying they had no idea that Arduino command line interface existed, and me, a Linux old-timer. Well, to be honest, I kind of feel the same. I'm not a Linux old-timer by any means, but I've been working in the command line for a long time, and yes, it took me an embarrassingly long time to know that it was an Arduino command line interface, and that's as someone who writes about Arduino and has done for many years. Yes, but congratulations. We'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this beautiful little Thunderboard Sense 2 out to you. The mystery box will continue to give mystery prizes to mystery people. We also have some quite interesting just general competitions like we've done in the past coming up quite soon. And we have a lot of really nice stuff to give away. But for now, let's get on with the rest of the show. We are now moving on to funding website things, which is the part of the show where we look at things on funding websites. I really need to work out something new to say at the start of this section. And we are starting with Roundy. Now, you may have seen this reported in a few places. This is a super exciting little development board. And the thing that is super exciting about it is that it seems that the screen on it is just wonderful. If you are looking at that and thinking, oh, that looks like an ESP device on the back of it, you would be right. The ESP12E is also known as the ESP8266. It is the same internal chip. It's just a different package for it, I believe. If I have that wrong, please do let me know in the comments. But yes, it has everything you need in order to program this screen that's on it, including an SD card, so you can put your own imagery onto the SD card. So you're seeing, yeah, there's really quite high quality imagery you can put on this thing. Now, what I completely forgot to just mention is this is an ESP12E based board, but it's also an RP2040 based board. You can get it in two variations, one with the Raspberry Pi silicon on it and one with the chip from Espressif. Which I think is another wonderful little idea. It comes in these two flavors, and I completely understand why they would do that, because it's a different way to program each one, and also it just gives it a different sort of style. The RP2040 is, of course, the much more powerful chip, but the ESP12E version has wireless capabilities. I mean, pick what you need. I like that. I like the idea that they thought of that, and instead of trying to stuff everything into one board, they just said, no, let's just give it two variations. Sometimes that's the way to go. So as you can see, there's the aforementioned SD card slot, and here it is talking with, well, presumably this is the ESP12E version, or maybe this is just talking directly with the Arduino IDE. Either way, you can see this is just a good way of showing information. Here is a temperature and humidity, basically a small weather center. Now, as you can see, there are a few bundled features for the screen as well. These are all different things you can have for like a smartwatch or an automobile speed gauge. I thought that was quite nice. You could, with a little bit of work, you could rig this up to your bike, couldn't you? And just have a nice Hall effect sensor running around the wheel and do all the numeric maths to know how fast you were going. That's a quite fun little plan. And yeah, various other things. The point being that this is the kind of project that I talk about sometimes really liking, that it does something simple, but it seems to do it very, very well. Which is better than throwing the entire kitchen sink at a project and saying, this thing can do absolutely everything. And maybe you won't deliver on that promise. Maybe you won't even be able to manufacture it because it takes so many parts. This is simple, it is good, and it is pretty cheap as well. So for the Roundy Pi, which is the RP2040 Raspberry Pi silicon version, you have to pledge £25 or more. That's around 30 euros or whatever that is in dollars. And of course, that can be sent anywhere around the world. And the other version, which is the Roundy Fi, as in Wi-Fi, that is £30 or more. That's about 36 euros or whatever that is in dollars. So they're not particularly expensive either. Now, have I been covering these the entire time? I may well have been. I apologize. So yes, as you can see. Yeah, this is not particularly expensive for the high quality screen that you're getting and the ease of use. I hope this project does well. I have a feeling it is going to, given that the initial thing that they wanted for this was around about 500 euros and they now have 15,000 euros. I think this Kickstarter is going rather well. But I will leave a link to it in the description nonetheless. If you would like to get a hold of one of these, if you do get a hold of one of these, please let me know what you do with it. I will certainly be getting a hold probably of the Wi-Fi version of it, because I do like the idea of having this perhaps just on the top of the screen, or maybe even right next to the camera here, just giving me some nice information about what is going on. Because yes, if I'm having a horrific hardware spike and the video that you're watching is going to be stuttery, I would like to know that before I get to the editing stage. That's what I'm sort of thinking about using it for. But yes, Roundy Pi, Roundy Fi, what a wonderful project. Moving on to the MangoPi-Nezha MQ. Now, you may have heard a little bit of rustling about this board recently because it is quite exciting. MangoPi recently put out a couple of boards. One is ARM-based, one is RISC-V based, and this is a, as it says, tiny open source RISC-V development board that integrates Wi-Fi connectivity, dual USB Type-C ports into one minimalist, easy-to-use product measuring 4 centimeters by 4 centimeters. However, it can do a lot more. It has some fantastic interfaces for display. So, for example, it has a DSI interface that can work with the same kind of resistive touch displays, or do I mean capacitive touch displays, that the Raspberry Pi uses. There's a huge amount I could go into here, but a lot of it is stuff that I don't understand. I've said several times on the show, and I make absolutely no bones about the fact that I know nothing really about FPGAs. I have very much scratched the very surface of how to get started with them. But if you are into starting with FPGAs and are looking for a pretty much do-it-all board, this might be worth looking at. So just a couple of things before I move on from this, because as I said, this is pre-launch. We will be coming back to it. This runs Tina Linux, which is an open WRT-based embedded system. They've also implemented support for Xboot and RT Smart, a high-performance microkernel operating system for professional real-time applications. Yes, there's a lot to love here. Now, if you do want to know more about it at this stage, I suggest coming to this page because there is a full features and specs list. And if you would like to keep up with this project, do enter your email address here under the subscription bar. This is where you can find out a little bit more about the project when it goes live, and you get updates from the team whenever they have something they feel is worth updating you about. I've done this on several crowd supply projects, and it is kind of useful, because it's easy to kind of forget when you look at so many things that there is some stuff that you have genuine interest in and want to come back to later. This is a good way of being reminded by the very people that are making it. But I'll leave that as it is for now. If you are interested in getting into RISC-V, there are many small boards out there, but this one looks like one of the more higher featured boards in terms of what it can do, and just it's a lovely little footprint about this by this. So MangoPi-Nezha MQ. There will be a link to it in the description of this video. We're going to close out this show with a quick fire look at a few interesting things from the internet this week. These are, frankly, all things that I'd love to spend a bunch of time on, but there's far too many of them, so what I'll do is I'll give you a quick overview of what it is, why I think it's awesome, and of course where you can find it. So first, Edge AI is probably the biggest thing going on right now. Doing inference on the edge, everyone's talking about it. This could really shake stuff up. Aspinity takes on TinyML, claiming the industry's first fully analog machine learning chip. Now, some of that stuff is above my knowledge level, it may be above yours. There's a very useful diagram here that explains exactly what is going on here. Usually, you get your sensor data from your sensors, and it goes through the analog to digital converter before it gets to your digital processor / controller. With an Arduino, with anything like that, you've done this before. It comes into the analog in, it goes through the ADC, and that's how the chip can make sense of the data. This is a tiny little coprocessor on the side that performs machine learning and other computations in analog before it gets digitized. This means that you don't need to fire up the ADC of the chip. This means that the chip can stay sleeping for longer, which technically means that these edge AI devices could use a lot less power. That's all I'm going to say about this for now. The article is absolutely fascinating. If this is a big thing, and you know it's going to be a big thing, and you're part of the industry, please do head to the comments, tell me why. This seems super exciting, but as I said, it's just a little bit above what I know about. But yeah, if this is the very first time something like this is happening, it's an exciting time to be part of the Edge AI movement. Up next, Coolest Projects Global 2022. Now, this is something the Raspberry Pi Foundation puts on. It is a completely online global call to arms for young tech creators to show their projects. It's a wonderful thing. If you are interested in being a part of it, registration stays open through until May. You can find the link on this page, which I will link in the description. And as it says here, by registering a tech project, you'll represent your community, get the coolest limited edition swag, and you may even win a prize and earn the recognition of the special project judges. If you are interested in being a part of it, you will see there is projects. They can be registered in the following categories: Scratch, Games, Web, Mobile, Apps, Hardware, and Advanced Programming. So, I'll leave a link to this in the description. This full blog article is worth a read through, but if you or someone you know think that you might want to enter this, I would certainly do it. Coolest Project is a very cool thing. Continuing on at our rapid fire pace, and please do let me know if this is too rapid, because obviously I do want to be understood, but there's a lot to fit in. Let me know in the comments. But yes, if you've used a camera with a Raspberry Pi, you've probably used the Pi Camera library. Now, this was a third-party library written by a Raspberry Pi community member back in the day. Now, the Raspberry Pi Foundation is rewriting this library as Pi Camera 2, so it can be an official thing that comes bundled with the Raspberry Pi. It's done in-house now, and that's what this next bit is about. Yes, there is a preview release of the Pi Camera 2 library. If you've used Pi Camera, you know it's an incredibly easy way to use a camera with a Raspberry Pi. This is a very early release version, and they warn you very much in this blog post that you should know that. However, if you would like to help with the preview release debugging of Pi Camera 2, you can head to this link, which I will leave in the description of the video, and give it a spin. Finally this week, something that's somewhat mind-blowing to me. This is a biohybrid fish. It's, as it says, made of human heart muscles. Now this isn't a living thinking thing. This is something that's been created in a laboratory with human heart cells on each side. And when one side moves, it triggers the proteins on the other to move back. So this thing continually moves itself and can move like this for months at a time. Now, this is something that is being used specifically to learn about heart cells, and the idea this is going to be used in cardiac research. But the project itself is just, I don't know, there's something about this which hits the kind of uncanny side of where biosensing and robots, and as it says, biohybrid things, that's a word that is new to me. Of course, this is something that is probably far beyond all of us. We're not going to be making things like this anytime soon. We're not going to have any part of it, but it is very interesting to know about. As you can see, this is a video that was embedded on the Adafruit blog where they've written a bit about it. You can find more from the motherboard link, and of course, there's this video here. This is a project that was happening at Harvard, by the way. And so, yes, I will leave a link to this crazy biohybrid fish in the description. I know this is a cliche thing to say, but what a time to be alive. What a weird, kind of, but amazingly mind-blowing thing to see. So that was our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and as always, thank you for all the support you show this show, be that on YouTube by subscribing and liking and all that YouTube nonsense, or by going and buying stuff from the Electromaker store. The Discord server is there. Please do join it, and please do get involved and come and say hello, tell us what you're working on. But as always, I hope you have a fun, safe, and creative week, and I will see you in the next show.